believe for it. There are other times that you just hold on for the ride. And he said, this is one of those times, Lori. All you have to do is hang on and don't take yourself there. It has nothing to do with you.
Well, and also, Lori, as you can see, this is where many people lose their faith.
Yeah.
And they blame God or they blame this. They don't know the intention. They don't know. So many people blame God for things like this because they put that all on him or on the divine, as if because I'm putting it and I'm believing 100% it's going to happen. Right. It's not that way, and you can't blame. It's because you don't know his intentions. Right. You don't know that there's something greater out of this pain that you're going through. And nobody wants to lose a loved one. Nobody wants to lose a child, a husband, a sister, a brother, any of that.
Well, and I tried to hang on. I tried to hang on for his sake. I tried to hang on for my kids' sake. I tried to hang on for my sake. So when we went to the hospital, we went quite a few times, they would tell me aside, they'd say, he is dying. You need to know that, and you need to prepare yourself. And I just had to block it out, which I was in complete denial. And I felt like I had to be in denial to stay sane. I had to be in denial because of the way my husband was believing. I didn't know I didn't know what to do. And so it was a really crazy time. Now I look back, and just the other day when I was thinking about sharing this, I was thinking about how I walked through that. And I thought, if I had given in to his passing, to his dying, how would I have been different going through that situation? And I may not have had the strength to walk through it. So in that kind of perspective, it may have been strength for me to really keep going. If I let myself go to that place that I was going to lose him, I don't know how much good I would have been for the kids at that time, how much good I would have been for him at that time if I would have just lost it. I don't know.
But can you see that this is where you were helped by believing that?
Yes.
God did help you in that.
Yeah.
And he made you strong.
Yeah.
And in that in itself is how you can look at that. God did help me during that time.
And I think God knew, maybe my husband knew, that I had to somehow have that to keep myself from falling apart. It was rough because the second month after that first month he was lucid, he was okay. The second month he wasn't. And he just went downhill so fast. And he would say things that made no sense. It was crazy. And he started losing weight and turning yellow and, had to have fluid drained. And one time he got up in the middle of the night. He was sleeping. We had a couch in our room and our bed, and he couldn't sleep on the bed. He couldn't lay flat. He didn't feel good that way. So I'd kind of prop him up on this couch, and just so that I was right there with him if he needed anything or whatever. And he got up in the middle of the night, stood up, and I was like, "Are you okay? What do you need? What's going on? You need to go to the bathroom? What?" Because I'd have to help him to the bathroom and stuff. And he just looked at me and he said, "Bicycle, bicycle." And I just was like, okay, I don't know what you're trying to say to me. And he was so he was trying to communicate something to me, but whatever was not coming out but bicycle. And I called my brother up, and my brother and my husband were the best of friends. And he came over, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. And he was not making sense. Things were not right. And he said, I think we just need to take him to the hospital. So we took him to the hospital, and they gave him a drug. I mean, his brain was getting poisoned from everything in his body. Mm-hmm. He wasn't able, because your liver processes all that stuff. His liver wasn't processing anything. It was getting backed up. So they gave him a drug that helped, the toxins would kind of cling to, and then it would move out of his system. Mm. So by the time we got to the hospital, he was practically in a coma, and they gave him that medicine, and he came out of it. And I mean, he just looked at me and said, you just got to have faith. I mean, he said stuff like that to me, and I'd be like, okay, all right. Okay, I'll just gotta, everything's going to be okay. I mean, whatever it was that he said, I can't remember specifically at this point, but it's like, all right. So he came out of that. He was not in great shape, but we brought him home, and he did okay. And I would give him food and feed him. I would move his legs and, we would talk about, okay, we want to keep you moving because when you're better, we don't, all this kind of stuff. And my kids were all around all of this. People would come over and pray for him. And he just was always in such great spirits. Always, always. He never complained. He wasn't in a lot of pain though. So I think that helped. A week and a half after that episode where he said bicycle and we took him into the hospital, it happened again. And I called my brother up. We took him back to the hospital again. And we were sitting in the emergency room, waiting room, and his eyes were rolling back and he was like, he was going out. And I am starting to panic sitting here and they're making us wait. And I told them his situation. I told them where he was and we were waiting. And this woman comes in with a broken leg. She's in so much pain. And she looks at my husband and she starts screaming at the nurse, "You better get him back there right now." She could see it was bad. And so they got us back there. They got us back in the room. And the same ER doctor that had helped him before and gave him that medication was the guy that was there at that time.
Oh, great.
So we go into the room and I said, just give him what you gave him before. Just help him. And he said to me, "Lori, I can give him that drug if you want me to. I'm here for you. I'm your doctor. I can do whatever you want." He said, "But he's bleeding internally." He said, "He's dying. And if I give him that drug, it's going to make things very uncomfortable for him. And you are going to have to make a choice." He says, "We can put him in a room.
Oh, gosh.
We can just let it be and you can spend the time with him. But he is dying. You have to make that choice." And his mom and dad were there and a friend of mine was there, one of my best friends. And she'd gone through breast cancer previously and her dad had just passed away from cancer. And she was there for me, man. And I just said, "Okay, everybody has to get out of the room." I said, "Everybody has to go." So they all left the room, but I stood in that room with my husband and I had to make a choice. It was the hardest thing, besides telling my children later, that I ever did. And I had to decide what to do. And I just prayed and I said, "God, either you're going to heal him or you're going to take him. And it's up to you because there's not anything else I can do. And I'm not going to have them give him anything else. I don't want him to be in pain. I don't want him to be struggling at this point. So I don't know what you're going to do, but I just put it in your hands." And I had to tell his parents then, "We're not giving him anything. They're going to put him in a room and we'll just be with him." And my girlfriend was there and she just hung out in the background and just was a support for me. And we went and took him up to a room. My brother came and some friends of ours from North Dakota, we had lived there for many years. They were our best friends and they came down. They just came down to see him because they hadn't seen him since he'd gotten sick. So they came down to see him and here he was in the hospital. So we all, the four of us, sat up in that room with my husband and he was such a unique guy and so funny and the things that he did. And we just told stories and laughed and sat there with him. And I crawled up on the bed next to him. And we just honored his life that night. And he was hanging on. And my sister-in-law was not there. My sister-in-law, my brother, my husband and I were all very close. And she had sick kids at home, so she couldn't be there. So she comes in that day. My sister-in-law walks in. She sees my husband laying there. My sister-in-law has gone through. She's got a story all her own, I'll tell you. But she puts her hand on his chest and she said, "Mark," she said, "Lori's going to be okay." She said, "Everything is going to be okay." She said, "We just release your spirit to Jesus." And within an hour, he died. And it was the hardest thing. And before this happened, so I have to backtrack just a little. So he was in the hospital. I had all my children come in. I didn't want my children to stay there. They were, like I said, between 5 and 15. I didn't want them to remember him so bad. But I brought him in. They came in 2 at a time. So, or my youngest 3 came in or whatever. Anyway, kind of little by little, they came in. I said, I want you to, be here for a little bit. I want you to say goodbye if you feel you need to say goodbye because your dad is not going to make it. I want you to say the things you need to say and just know that. So they had some time with their dad and they were able to say goodbye to him. Except that my 2 oldest kids, now they were 13 and 15, they'd spent the most time with their dad. They'd seen how passionate he was about God. They saw how he believed God was going to heal him. So they came in and I said the same thing to them. And they were like, nope, we're not going to do it. Don't receive that, which is kind of an evangelical term. I'm not going to receive that. I'm not going to believe that. No. So they would not say goodbye to him. They just wouldn't. That was hard. So they ended up leaving and they went and stayed with some friends of mine. We stayed vigil in the hospital. And then my sister-in-law came in, like I said. Right before he died, I just had my head down and he opens up his eyes. Now he'd been in a coma for, I don't know, however long since we brought him in. He opened up his eyes and he looked at me. I had my head down. I didn't see him look at me. My friend says, Lori, he's looking at you. He's looking at you. And when I look up, he lifts his eyes up and he looks to the right and he looks to the left of the hospital bed. And my friend is saying, you see the angels, Mark? Do you see the angels? And he closes his eyes and he's gone. Wow. And I say this because if you've been with anybody who's passing away, it's a very difficult place to be. And I was so afraid I was going to remember. That's all I was going to remember. And the day after, I was like, that's all I'm going to remember. It's just him in a horrible condition. And I remembered that he looked up. He looked
left and right.
And the angels ushered him out, I believe. And that gave me great comfort for him, and for me to remember that rather than the other. It gave me a choice in my mind. I was glad that my children weren't there to see him so suffer.
When you say that it's a difficult place, in my mind, what I hear is it's actually a sacred
It is very
place
sacred
to be. It's difficult for us that are staying.
Yeah.
But if you can sit in the sacredness of what is actually happening.
Yeah.
Where a spirit is being released from our human condition, which is what he had, a human condition.
Yes. Probably brought on himself by his own negligence.
It doesn't matter.
But you know what I mean?
Yes.
We can cause those things ourselves, or we cannot, or it can be environmental or whatever. Those things are human conditions.
Those are human conditions. And that's the part when I am sure your 2 older ones have probably lost faith. And because when you're young, you believe what your parents tell you. And I can see the Mark believing that, and you were struggling to believe it. And this is the part where we come here for human experiences. And yes, God can do anything, but I sometimes think he's not going to get in the way of the plan of your human experience.
Well, the Bible says all of our days are written in a book, and he knows every one of them. So if his days were written to 43, that was his life that was set forth from the beginning. You can't alter that. You can't change that. And to be honest, when I read that, it gave me great comfort knowing that this was his life and he lived his life to the fullest. He had no regrets. He had no anything.
That's great.
And I share this story in some ways because later, if I have had friends, and I'll tell you my friend that was there, that was my support, that was there during all that stuff, a year later, she passed away from cancer. And that was another really difficult thing for me. I say this because I want, no matter what your faith is, no matter what you believe, no matter how, when you're in that kind of situation, I believe that you should say the things to the people that you love. Even if you have no disease, say the things to the people